Hi, I'm Sarah Robinson. I'm a careers consultant and coach, and I work with people who are looking to change career direction, get support on interviews, and embrace their strengths. And I'm really pleased to be joined by Cho Perusa, who's a mental health professional, really experienced in working with a whole range of different businesses and organisations in improving their mental health, and founder of Working With You in Mind. And today's topic, I think, really resonates pretty much with both of us on a lot of different levels, is from burnout to breakthrough. So Joe, just tell me a little bit about why this topic is so important to you and how it resonates with you.
Hi Sarah, thanks very much for that lovely introduction. I think that the topic burnout to breakthrough really resonates with me because years ago, probably about maybe 4 or 5 years ago now, I experienced my own burnout. Since then, I've done a number of things to help me recover, but also have had many breakthroughs. So it really is a subject that I feel is common for people. Mm-hmm. Often people don't recognise they're actually in burnout, because I certainly didn't at the time. And, you know, sometimes you wonder whether you will ever have a breakthrough and kind of recover from that experience. So for me, it's really important to get that message across that people can. And they will come out the other end a much stronger person.
So what would you say are some of the sort of warning signs, the red flags that really indicate that someone is going through burnout or that they're in it at the moment?
I think from my own personal experience, I was experiencing this lack of sleep was definitely a big factor for me. I couldn't sleep. I was a directorate manager within the NHS. I had a very big portfolio, huge budget, and it was a very stressful time, as it always is in the NHS. But within forensic psychiatry, you've got a very high risk patient group and a high number of staff, and staff are dealing with many challenges. And so you kind of come home never really winding down, never actually stopping the clock at 5:30 or whatever time it was that I was due to finish, because my work would continue, and some of that would take me right into the night, being on call, getting calls from distressed staff, getting calls from commissioners unhappy with service provision, not being able to find beds. And after a few months, that starts to kind of implode and build up. So you're always waiting for the disaster to happen.
Yeah.
You know, so that feeling of overwhelm, going to bed, am I going to get a night's sleep tonight? Or am I going to get woken up? Always probably not really sleeping and listening for the phone to go anyway. So, you know, that quality of sleep was the first thing I started to notice. Okay. I didn't have a quality of sleep basically because I wasn't sleeping very well. And then I'd be getting up, getting my family ready for school. And it felt like I was just on a conveyor belt, that my emotions were quite suppressed. And then when they did surface to the top, it was usually either in tears or anger. There was never a kind of balance of being rational about many things. You know, I always considered myself someone that was really measured in my decision making, in my thinking, in the way that I processed information, and that just went out of the window. So I knew at that point, I think something wasn't right for me. So but I didn't act at that time. I just kept pushing through. You know, I kind of felt I was a single mom. I didn't have a lot of choice in having to go to work. I didn't want to let my family down, but I also, you know, I loved my career and had this job that I really loved and I wanted to excel in and do really, really well. I'd been given this opportunity and I didn't want to kind of make a mess of that, because I always kind of felt a little bit of that imposter syndrome. Well, are they going to find out that I can't do this job anyway?
And I think some of the things that I know I've experienced through that process of overwhelm and, you know, feeling as though I'm going to hit burnout any minute, is that it's the little things that can really annoy and can build up. And actually I see that with a lot of people that I've worked with, is that just the irritability has just gone up on another scale, and things that they could really sort of be more resilient and bounce off them it's that they just can't tolerate it anymore.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that word resilience, I felt that I didn't have any resilience, and I was a strong person. I kind of knew my job inside out because I'd worked in the NHS for many years. I understood their systems and processes. I was confident in my abilities, but something was really impacting on me, feeling a lack of confidence. I just wanted some days to go into work and shut the office door, take the phone off the hook and not speak to anybody, because I knew that anybody that came in my office wasn't going to say to me, "You are doing amazing today." It was going to be, "This has happened. This has gone wrong. You need to sort this out. You need to get to here. You need to get to there. How on earth has this incident occurred?" And I knew that it would be a catalogue of events that were not going to be positive.
So what was the prompt or the encourager that really helped you try to sort it out, actually to take action and do something about it?
Well, I remember this day like it was yesterday, as I think we often do when we're kind of in a bit of a state of trauma, I guess, which I think that burnout is trauma. I think that if we don't catch it early enough, it can be exceptionally damaging for people. And I remember driving down the motorway. I had to go to a meeting from Manchester to Warrington. And I remember driving down the motorway and I stopped at the service station for petrol. And I just thought, I'm not going. I am not putting myself through this journey, and I'm not going. But I could also feel myself getting exceptionally anxious because I'd made this decision that I now had to kind of phone my service director and say, I'm kind of done with this for now. I need to go home, And so for me, it was pulling over at that service station and thinking, I can't go through with this today. It was just like the end, the icing on the cake is often what you hear people describe it as. And I just filled my car up with petrol, turned around and went back home.
Wow, and how did that feel?
I had to get home. I was like rushing. I just needed to get home, get in somewhere where no one could get a piece of me. I felt that if I went in that meeting, I was either going to be potentially annihilated by commissioners who weren't happy, or I was just going to get more and more work piled on top of me, which I didn't want to take on either. So it was almost like my safety valve just went up to protect myself. Get in the car, turn around, deal with the outcome when you get home. And so when I couldn't get in contact with my boss, so I just sent a message through my PA saying, I haven't gone to the meeting. I need to contact my boss and I'll explain later. But I felt once I got home, I felt safe because I felt exceptionally exposed at that time as well. And I think that's something when I hear people talk about burnout, that they feel very exposed and people can see all their flaws and people can, kind of see that they're a failure, but actually they can't. I think it's the fact that that person themselves feels a failure.
So was the experience that you went through, was that a catalyst to really setting up for yourself and working with others? I know that you're obviously a really experienced mental health professional anyway. But what was the catalyst to try and reach out to more people and working within businesses to try and help them going through similar experiences you had?
Yeah, I think it was exactly that. I think after a few months, I did take some time off work before I made a decision to leave. I went through quite a difficult kind of process of leaving work, which I think, again, is really common because I think when you are experiencing burnout, I think it's a very strong signal to make a change. And sometimes we don't want to make that change because even in our discomfort and our distress, it's a bit more comfortable than fear of the unknown.
Yeah.
And I do think that that is very, very common for people. So for me, I decided to take a massive leap of faith. I had nothing to go to. I had 3 children. I was a single parent, but I thought I've got to demonstrate to my family that things don't have to stay the same. You can do something that you've really wanted to do for a long time. And I am a firm believer that out of a storm, you can create a lot of clarity for yourself and you can perhaps be somewhere very, very different to where you are at that time, if you allow yourself and trust yourself and trust other people around you and get a good supportive network, which is what I built up outside to do that. And I suppose the reason why I do what I do now is because I know that there are many people that are experiencing that in the workplace and they don't know where to go to. Perhaps they don't even understand what they're experiencing. They just know that going to work feels really uncomfortable. It can feel like a burning inferno for some people. And I want people to know that it doesn't have to be like that.
Absolutely, and I think it's important that people can reach out and they have clear strategies of what they can do next.
Yeah, absolutely.
So what are some of the main things that people who are going through this and can really resonate with your story? What are some of the practical things that they can do to try and get that breakthrough?
So I think the first practical thing is definitely rest.
Yeah.
I found that if anybody mentioned work to me in that period of time, kind of in a few weeks after, I had to say, I really can't talk about this right now. I just needed to rest, to kind of gather my own thoughts and gather me to who I was, and not have any I'm not ready to talk about work just yet. That needed a lot of time. That took a good month, maybe a little bit longer, before I could actually begin to feel comfortable in actually talking about work, because I get an instant headache. It was kind of like that toxicity. And I think, again, physically, our bodies will also tell us as well as mentally. So for me, the headache was always a sign that something was quite toxic and it wasn't right, whether that was within me or whether that was within the organization or whether that was within the person that I was talking to. But I think, look out for those physical triggers that tell you that this isn't right, something isn't right. I don't want to talk about this today. I'm going to leave it and come back to it when I can. So that was one thing. So I slept a lot.
Yeah.
When I'd get the kids up, get them to school, I'd come back and I'd have, a power nap before I could actually get on with the day. And that really helped me. I found that exercise, I'd always enjoyed exercise anyway, but I found going for long walks really helpful. Listening to something calming, music or a podcast, just something to kind of take your mind off the distress.
Yeah.
So something that was really, that I found those two things kind of pretty essential, really. They were kind of like they're in my toolkit, my first aid toolkit for burnout. Those two things are definitely in there. And then when I began to kind of think about, right, I'm kind of ready to start thinking about what my next move is now, what's that going to look like, I actually reached out and got myself a coach to talk things through with, to make sure that where was I in my growth and development, where was I in my own mental health. I did visit my GP as well, and they were very, very helpful and understanding about what was going on. I could have had medication, I chose not to, but absolutely, if people feel that's the right thing, then do what was going to help you. It's really important to feel no shame about having to take medication. There's nothing wrong with that. So I think that's a really important, because I think a lot of people feel they're a failure if they need to have medication. It just wasn't right for me at that time. So when I started my coaching, I began to realize that I'd probably had imposter syndrome for quite some time. And that I wasn't really believing in my own abilities at work. And then when things started to kind of, I suppose, catapult out of control, I was blaming myself rather than looking at the wider organization and what was going on in the organization, because I was probably blinded and I couldn't see it because of my stress and anxiety was so high. The only thing that I did was focus on the things that I probably thought I was doing wrong.
Yeah.
So taking on that too much responsibility, taking on actually, the buck stops with me when it doesn't. And I know for some people it does, but that's why you have a team.
And this is a common disconnect for people, isn't it? Is that people who are very high achievers, very driven, motivated, they excel at a lot of different things. They can in turn put a lot of pressure on themselves that if they aren't delivering, if they aren't performing, if they see burnout or depression or anxiety is a sign of weakness, it really gets them questioning their ability to do anything.
It really does. It really does, because you know, I think particularly like you said with the high achievers that have to have it just right and being in control, I think is a big thing, wanting to control everything, when, you know, now I think let someone else take the control. You know, life has got to you've got to let go of a lot of things, I think, to get your breakthrough after a burnout as well. And that's something that I learned the hard way, but now I'm really glad that I've done that.
And I think another really interesting observation is that you reach out for support.
Yeah,
so whether
absolutely.
that was through your GP or a coach,
yeah.
it could be a partner, it could be a really close friend or family member. But it's having someone else to share those feelings with, that you're not just internalizing them the whole time.
Absolutely, yeah, definitely. And I think, you know, that was a big shift for me to make a decision, to put your trust in that person, because you have to. I think if you want to, you know, leave that behind and move forward and grow, you've got to be able to put your trust in that person that you're choosing to talk to. So not everybody's partners are particularly understanding, because actually they need that other person to be doing well, and that other person to be functioning, and that other person to be, you know, rescuing them perhaps. So sometimes partners are great, and sometimes they're not the best people to speak to, or family members, I think, because if you are a fixer, which I was a fixer, I was a helper, I'd been a nurse for, I don't know, 30 years. So obviously I fell into that role in my family as well. They weren't the right people for me to go to.
Yeah.
They would fall apart if they knew that I was falling apart. They wouldn't be able to kind of fix me or help me, or, you know, even they'd probably say, oh, for goodness sake, pull yourself together, sadly, but people do that. So for me, it was important to go external, find somebody that I could just be absolutely ruthlessly truthful with about what was going on, and it didn't matter.
And I think the benefit of coaches, I mean, we're both coaches, and we both have our own coaches.
Yeah.
And a big part of that is really accountability and
definitely
support, and being able to have someone who is completely impartial, who's really got your back. I mean, how helpful was having a coach and that accountability and that support during that burnout phase for you?
Essential, absolutely essential, because I could just, if I felt like I just needed to cry that day, she would just say, just go ahead. We'll, you know, when you're finished, when you're ready, we'll pick it up, and then we'll put something in place. Absolutely, you know, that space was my space for me for that hour to pretty much do whatever I felt I needed to do. And some days I'd be like, right, I'm going to take over the world today. And other days I'd be like, I actually can't speak. You know, I actually cannot speak. And that was also okay too, you know. So I think you've got to find the right person that works for you. And there are many coaches out there, but it's about who you feel you can just let go of all your own BS with, because we can tell ourselves a lot of rubbish.
Completely. I think what would be interesting to hear as well is about your business. So Working With You in Mind. Tell me a little bit more about that and who you work with.
Okay, so I've currently rebranded to Working With You in Mind, because I had a bit of a disconnect with my previous brand, and it wasn't sitting right, and it wasn't comfortable. So for me, Working With You in Mind is, you know, I'm very proud of that name, because that's what I do, because I really believe that the value in what I bring to organizations is I hold that organization, those people in mind, whilst I'm planning the work, whilst I'm working with them, and any follow-ups that I will do afterwards. Because it's so important for people to feel that they're held in difficult circumstances, that they're held through traumas, and that actually they can pick up the phone and say, Joe, do you think you could come back and just help us sort this next stage out? So for me, Working With You in Mind is about exactly that. That I work with their minds, but they will always be held in my mind as well. So that's really important. So the organisations that I've worked with the Department of Work and Pensions, which was incredible, working with their staff, delivering mental health training, because, you know, their staff really work with the most vulnerable people in the country. And they are very challenging customers and clients, and they often get put in very difficult kind of set of circumstances. So that was to really help them look at the behaviours and how we communicate with people can really make a massive difference over the phone, because they're not face to face, so they don't see what they're doing. They're listening to what's going on. So there's a lot of second guessing, I guess, for them. So it's about asking the right questions, but also beginning to understand why people will do the things they do or say the things they say, and to understand that actually if someone has got a mental health problem and you're on the phone to them, it's about listening, creating a safe space, picking up the non-verbals and picking up on the silences. And when you do those things, you will make a massive difference, and they may be the only person that person spoke to all week, for 2 weeks, maybe for longer. So really letting them know they've got a value position in that organisation.
So as we're coming towards the end of our sort of time together,
yeah,
what would you say are the main takeaways that people can have in terms of what steps they can do next if they feel that they're going through this sort of experience?
Okay, I think the first thing is to be really honest with yourself, and you know yourself well enough, regardless of, even if you think you don't, you know when there's a change going on, you know that when you're getting something knocking at your door saying you need to pay attention to this because I'm not going to go away until you do, please do something about that. Even if you start with talking to someone and going to your GP, just reach out. It's so important, because that can save that person a lot of heartache, you know, and a quicker road to recovery.
Yeah.
I think, you know, if you feel you really want to change something in your life, then do it. Doesn't matter how old you are. I was 50. Yeah, 50 when I made that decision to have a leap of faith. You know, life is very short for us. And I think if you have something that you're not doing, and that could be also manifesting in your burnout, and listen to what that thing is that you really want to do, and you could make a difference to so many people's lives in a different way. So don't ever shy away and thinking, I'm too old, I'm not good enough. None of that is true. None of that is true. And I think the other thing would be to just really listen to yourself, really, really listen to what your body's telling you, and act on any physical changes that might be occurring, and don't ignore them.
Absolutely, because I think if you start paying more attention to how you're feeling, the thoughts that are coming through, you know, you need to act on it. And there's definitely support out there through people like yourself and the amazing work that you do.
Thank you. Yeah, and likewise, you know, for people that are in a transition of a career move as well, because often, you know, that can be something that is so pivotal for people, where, you know, they really want to do something else, but they don't know how to do it. You know, reaching out to a careers consultant and coach to actually work through that and to see the skills that they have. Because when you've been in a job for a long time, you actually forget the skills that you have, because you're just doing it day in, day out, and it becomes natural, doesn't it? And then when you think, oh my gosh, how am I going to transfer those skills to that, what I really want to do? It can be done though.
Completely. And I think a lot of the work that I do is very much strengths-based coaching. So it's not just identifying what skills you have and what you're good at, but it's where does the energy lie? Where do you get the enjoyment in order to, and how do you recapture that enjoyment, particularly if you've gone through something very stressful, such as a burnout? It's how do you tune into understanding what it is that you're energized by and your strengths, not what you feel that you've learned to become good at.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love that, because, you know, our energy in burnout is very different to our energy we are when we've come through burnout to our breakthrough. And I think that's really important, that you will come out a very different person. You know,
Well,
and
Jo,
you
it's
will
been absolute pleasure to talk with you.
Thank you very much.
I think some
great.
really practical and, you know, impactful tips that you shared with us. So thank you very much for your time, and hope
Thank you,
people
Sarah.
have enjoyed the tips and the advice given.
Thank you. Thank you.